Knapsack enables digital product teams to connect their Figma design assets and components directly to the corresponding production coded components in the engineering world, so that we can start to really get alignment and clarity around how these things work together or don't. Let's go into something like a button to see what that looks like. So here we have our dynamic docs. Lots of this is powered by, in this case, production React components. We also have the ability to pull in through the REST API our Figma components. This is showing me all the variations of this button in Figma, letting me have a link to the design source, and also pulling in the actual spec. Right? So how can we actually understand the data and the structure of this component? This gives us a way to look at design right next to the coded component. Here what I'm looking at is I'm actually pulling in a production component through, in this case, a package dependency through NPM. I've got all these examples, and as I modify this, users can see what that is going to look like in the actual corresponding code. And now that we have these together, we can start to do things like build comparisons. Here I'm looking at variants of my React component, variants of the Figma component, the properties, and starting to understand, do they align or do they not? And we're even building more advanced tools that let the teams managing these have that sort of bird's eye view, right? And so I can come in here and see all of the different components I have. I can actually see where the spec is aligned and where it's not, or my properties are missing in some cases. If I go into the message, you'll see I've got, let's go look at our message. So I've got a Figma component connected here. I don't have code. I've got some usage guidelines. If I go back to patterns and I go to my message, you'll see it's actually suggesting a coded component in my library that seems like it should correspond to this. And what's great about this is from this bird's eye view, I can go ahead and click that. We'll see that now the specs aren't aligned, but that's okay. Now let me go back to message, and now I've wired up my React component to this, right? And I can actually start to go add props and configure demos and all those things. But that's how easy it is just to bring design and code together in the same place. But what we're also really excited about is now that we have this idea of spec alignment, if we have alignment in how the data is set up in design and how it's used in variants of a component in Figma, and we have that corresponding data architecture within our components, we can actually use that to inform prototyping. So building out pages and examples and coming from Figma is now possible because we can take all the things like this layout and like the card within it, or the 3 cards within it. All of this is just represented as hierarchical data. I've got a card that's got some props configured, and I can come in here and say, press release, and you're going to see this change with all my typos in real time in the product. I can add a button to this. And so really I'm working within the structure of my system. Maybe I go change the name of that button to say, read more. So I can do all this in code directly if I want to just experiment with what I can do with my system. I can also, bring this in from Figma if I have all the corresponding components and I have spec alignment. So really taking the idea of bringing design and code together so far past documentation and giving teams superpowers with this type of infrastructure.